Okay, well, thanks very much for having me. I have a PowerPoint presentation for you. Right. So I want to talk to you tonight about the Free Bible Project. I said to a few people, if I'd heard the presentations that I've heard throughout today a few years ago, this would all be very different, all right? But there we are, I didn't, so it is what it is. But I want to talk to you about this Free Bible Project, and it's Sabbath now, and I want to really, though, talk about evangelism, because I think most of us are here, because our technical interests coincide with our overriding interest, which is in spreading the gospel of Jesus Christ. And so I want to ask you a question tonight, and that is, what is the value of one soul? It's not rhetorical. You can respond. What is the value of one soul? Okay, the answer you're groping for is infinite. Yeah? The value of one soul is infinite, isn't it? Yeah? Christ would have died for any one soul. So I do need to rephrase that question, seeing as it's the Sabbath and we're all in a holy mood. So rephrasing the question, how much should we pay for one baptism? I mean, let's get real here, okay? The church has limited budget and we want to get baptisms, we want to get people joining our church, so how much are we prepared to pay? Well, I can tell you that we used to pay a lot more than we're paying now. We used to put a lot more money into evangelism than we are doing now. In the 1960s, we used to run massive evangelistic campaigns. I don't know what they would be if you translated them into currency today, but they would be millions of pounds. And we spent a lot of money on evangelism. We filled places like the New Gallery in London. I don't know if there's anybody here who even remembers these places. Yeah? And we put on really big events. We'd have teams, 20, 25 ministers, all working full-time, all summer, on these evangelistic campaigns. And it was worth it in those days. I guess someone in the union office then did the sums, and they worked out that it was worth doing. We'd put out a few leaflets, and next thing you know, we would get people queuing round the block in order to come to these excellent meetings. And that's what the evangelistic meetings looked like. Now, we don't get many meetings like that in Wales now. I'm not sure what it's like here, but I suspect maybe not even here you get this kind of response. So the question is, and this is I'm going through my thought process here, which led me to this Free Bible Project, which I'll be talking about shortly. What has changed in the last 50 years? Well, what hasn't changed, I suppose? But a couple of things that are very obvious changes. One of them is that it's incredibly hard now to draw a crowd. There's far too much competition out there. You can't get people coming to your churches now to hear dead men do tell tales, because they've heard it all before. You get documentaries on this kind of thing every night on the TV. People are not going to show up for that kind of thing. It just doesn't work anymore. And another slightly subtle and more controversial one, and I'm putting this in really to be provocative, but certainly here in the UK, immigration has become a much cheaper route to church growth than evangelism. The numbers have gone up. I'm not saying it's easy, and it takes a lot of effort, of course, to disciple people as they come into the country, and we lose a lot that we shouldn't lose. But nevertheless, I suspect that the growth we've seen in the UK due to immigration has dulled our appetite for large-scale evangelism. So what do? Well, the typical way that we think of people coming to the church, coming into becoming a discipled Seventh-day Adventist, is something like this. We kind of count on all the work being done by the local church. The local church is where the people are. They meet the people in the local community. They bring the people into the church, and that kind of brings them into the worldwide family of the Adventist church. Except that there is now, and always has been to some extent, a bit of a disconnect between our churches and the public. Do you know what I'm saying here? That, some of our churches don't actually look like the publics that they serve. Our churches may be in districts, and the church looks totally different in many, many different ways from the community that they're serving. Now, we've been aware of this for a long time, and I think that is why we have developed several evangelistic approaches that bypass the local church. And this is really where media comes in, because we recognize that the church is only going to reach a certain small minority of people in the communities where they live. Therefore, we have to have different forms of evangelism. We have to reach beyond the church, and this was the motivation behind things like the VOP and the Adventist World Radio, all of these things, the Hope Channel, and now, of course, all the things that we've been talking about here, things where we recognize we have to go beyond the normal route and reach out to the public generally. So this is really, if I redraw the diagram, it's not actually an alternative, it's not actually a new thing I'm talking about, it's just an alternative way of reaching people. Okay, we get very few baptisms these days, and it's very hard to get baptismal statistics that actually mean anything. You will always get anecdotal evidence. And this is something for you to think about. Many battles in the church are won or lost on the value of anecdotal evidence. I've been on many committees where decisions that actually end up costing tens, if not more, thousands of pounds are based on, I knew somebody who came in through such and such a method and they were baptized, and they extrapolate from that to say, therefore, this is the method we must use to reach everybody. And as a collection of people who understand about data, we need to fight against this. We need to be absolutely rigorous in our analysis of everything that we do as a church, and particularly everything that we do in terms of technology. We need to analyze it very, very carefully and say, is it doing the job? We need to be honest with ourselves if it's not. So coming back to the value of one contact, the reason I changed my thinking about this, we can't analyze baptisms. Therefore, we need to get some reliable statistics regarding contacts. Now, I want to talk about the myth of the 1 to 1,000. Well, how much should we pay for one contact? Have you ever heard anyone talking about evangelistic leaflets? You know, and in the 60s, we used to put out 1,000 leaflets, and we'd get 23 people coming to our evangelistic meetings. And we all recognize that as time has gone on, that number has gone down. But it's a bit like the bank base rates, you know. It bottoms out at about 1 per 1,000. Anyone you're talking to, in my experience, says, how effective are leaflets? Well, we get about 1 per 1,000. Really? Is that the case? Has anyone else heard this? Or is it me, 1 per 1,000? Maybe it's just me. Well, in 2008, when I was slightly more naive than I am now, we did a controlled trial in the Welsh Mission. We put out 200,000 leaflets, flyers, for the Adventist Discovery Centre, all delivered by the Royal Mail, and we covered an entire county of Wales, Wondercon and Taff. And the total cost of distribution was £60 per 1,000. Actually, we didn't have to pay for the leaflets. We were provided those free by a generous donor. So the total cost of this experiment was 12,000, and I analysed very carefully the results that we got. Now, I know we had a presentation this morning that says you should repeat, but all right, so I know we should have done. Never mind, just for illustrative purposes, this is the result we got. We got one response for every 8,500 leaflets that we put out. That is the actual response we got. So do the math. The cost per contact was £510. Now, that's a lot of money for a contact. But here's the exciting bit, all right? But not a single person completed the course. So we spent £12,000 for not a single result in terms of a completion of a course. Do the math again there, by the way. Divide 12,000 by 0, and you come back to where I started, the infinite value of a human soul. Except, of course, there isn't a human soul at the end of the day. So, In short, what you all know probably already and why we're here, partly, we know that flyers on their own are not the answer. So what I decided was, I thought what we need to do is give people a reward. And if you think that we're prepared to spend £510 per contact generated, then spending a small amount on an incentive is really not a problem, is it? So I thought we could give them free Bibles. You can get free Bibles for a negligible cost, really. We get them in bulk, about £5 each for a nice quality hardback NIV Bible. £5, that's all. And people say to me, oh, you can't spend £5, you're giving away Bibles. And yet the mentality is that, okay, but it's okay to spend £510 on one contact. So think about it. The reward actually is negligible in the scale of things. And I then designed a quiz website, so to give them some kind of hook, something to do in order to get their reward. And I designed the free Bible website, which I'll come on to in a minute. This Christmas, by the way, I wrote it again for mobile, just a mobile web thing. Technical stuff. I'm really excited here because this is the first time I've been able to talk about this to a congregation that may have a clue what I'm talking about. So it's written in PHP with a MySQL database. It's your bog standard Unix website with a bit of JavaScript on the front to run the clock that tells you how long you've been doing the quiz. The mobile version was, at great disappointment to me, written in jQuery Mobile, which I hate. And if anyone can, anyone talk to me afterwards and help me out of this, and the wretched Ajax thing that I cannot get rid of. Anyway, that loads all this stuff that you don't want. Never mind about that. And we collect IP addresses and we get their approximate location from the IP address. I wish I had also programmed it to pick up the platform that they were using, because then we could send them all messages about the game on the iPad. So I'm just going to wait till the other version comes out, and then I'll do that. So I can talk as long as you want on the technical side of things, and Carsten, we must talk about this sometime. However, I am very aware of the danger, paraphrasing Abraham Maslow, that if your favorite tool is a hammer, every problem starts to look like a nail. And we are all here as technical people, and there's nothing I enjoy more than going home and fiddling through my PHP code, trying to work out a better way of doing, whatever it did. Can I rewrite something as a function? Can I streamline this code? Can I make it look prettier? But that's not why we're here. And I have to keep telling myself that we are here to do practical things. We're here to win souls for Jesus Christ. The technical side is important, but it is only part of the chain, the supply chain that actually leads people to Jesus Christ. Anyway, how's the rest of it work? We advertise the site through Google AdWords, and this is an underexploited resource, I suspect. There's so much more we could be doing through Google advertising. Many of you know more about other platforms, Facebook advertising, things like that. Google is the one that I've concentrated on. I now have some vague understanding of it, enough to be able to use it anyway. We also do some advertising by flyers, despite my prejudice against them, and there's flyers at the end of each of your row that you can see. We buy these flyers for about £13 a thousand in lots of 50,000. They complement the Google advertising in that we can use flyers to localize a response. It's still way more expensive than Google advertising, and it's just really there as a supplement. Okay, a little bit about the website. It's a quiz website based on the 28 fundamental beliefs of the church. So we have 28 subjects, each one on one of the fundamental beliefs of our church, in order, numbered 1 to 28. Each quiz has 20 multiple choice questions. So you've got 28 quizzes, 20 multiple choice questions, 5 possible answers, which gives, I worked it out somewhere. Anyway, I know I had to spend about a year writing all this stuff, which is, I learned a lot, actually, about what we believe. Anyway, let's come on to how the questions work. Just going through an example here. I can't really read it very well. It's PowerPoint. But you get the question on one side, you get the answers on the other, you click on an answer, and then you click the submit button, and the clock keeps ticking, and if you get it wrong, it simply makes you go back and try again. And it scrambles the list so you don't just keep clicking 1, 2, 3, 4 all the way down through. And that's it. The front end of it is very simple indeed. And when people have done 10 quizzes, which is 200 questions, then they are eligible for a free Bible. So you send them a message saying, you've done 10 quizzes, you're now eligible for a free Bible, well done, give us your address. We already have their email address, which they needed to log in. We already have their IP address, which we nicked. And we now also have their postal address, and then we go and bang on the door, and invariably, the people are pleased to get their free Bible. Invariably. I've never had a negative response. I've delivered over 200 Bibles now, and I've never had a negative response. Because you are on their side. So much of our previous door-to-door witness has been the door-to-door salesman approach, like certain other denominations are famous for. But this time, you are their representative. You go around and you deliver their prize, and they're always pleased to receive it. Give you some results. There's the Bible. Why the Bible, by the way? Why not the great controversy? Okay, let's not go there. But I think giving a Bible with no strings attached builds credibility. They think this is not someone who's out to sell something. This is not someone with an agenda. They are simply my representative on the Free Bible side. And I know some people do like to take a great controversy round when they deliver these things. I'm not too keen on that. But hey, results so far, I can't read them, but I've written something down here. In 2013, there were 34,000 quizzes completed. That's 93 quizzes per day. 14 people register per day on the site, and we get 5 completions per day. Since we started the site in 2010, we've had over 95,000 quizzes completed. When it gets to 100,000, I'll do a messenger article. I did one at 5,000. I think that was the last one. And I reckon that we've got about 1.5 million minutes of whatever the term was that was used this morning, engagement time that people have spent. It takes them about 15 minutes to complete a quiz, and we've had 95,000 completions so far. Advertising cost with Google is about £5.97. That's it. Right, that's what it exactly calculated out in 2013. £5.97 advertising cost per completion, plus the £5 for the Bible, plus the delivery cost, something like that, is still way short of your £510 per contact. So it's a lot more efficient. Some complications on this. Leaflets are still very inefficient. They're not a good way of making contacts. Google is far better. The problem with Google is it works best over a large geographical area. If you try to localize it, your cost per click goes up quite dramatically. So it works best if you have the whole of the BUC involved. Getting the whole of the BUC involved is a story in itself, and the back-end system that we've written for this, which sends out the automatic reminders to not only to the students but to the representatives, was a nightmare. And then trying to get the hearts and minds was even more of a nightmare. And the Hall of Shame helps those representatives who have not delivered their Bibles, and they will get a message after they haven't delivered it within a week. But anyway, so Leaflet's still efficient. Google takes some fine-tuning, anyone who's used it. It is not actually an easy beast. And I was pleased to hear today about the business about the feedback is not always accurate. The click-throughs, that is not necessarily a good measure of how successful the advertising is. Said that. We have to also build up a whole network of geographical of representatives, and we've done that to some extent. We use the ministers. We use other volunteers. They're all programmed in with the postcode so that when an address comes in with a particular postcode, the request is automatically sent to that person. Okay, biggest problem is, well, one of the biggest problems is getting people to deliver the Bibles. And the ADC now handles this, and if a Bible doesn't look like it's going to be delivered, it gets sent by post. Which is fair enough, if it's in some remote part of Wales where we don't have a minister, but there are some other examples. where the Bible could have been delivered, and there were preoccupations which stopped that happening, and that is very disappointing. So of the 2,000 Bibles that were delivered last year, only about half were delivered by a person at the door, which I class as a major failure. But nevertheless, at least 1,000 were. By the way, I hope this goes more or less without saying, the site, the free Bible site, is for non-Adventists. Yeah, it's an evangelistic site. This is not for our members to get free Bibles. That's quite clear. We do have an alternative site at quiz28.org if you want to just do the questions for yourself and learn the things that I learned as I was writing it. So yeah, please don't encourage your members to visit the free Bible site. It is not for them. And please don't click on the adverts, because it'll cost us 28p every time you do. Some of the benefits that we've got. It forces us to reach beyond our normal target audiences and our normal communities. If you give a Bible to a member who's agreed to be a representative, they have to deliver it to whoever the person is, and it's usually outside of their social circle. This is a GAiN we could talk about for a long time, but I think it helps us to shift our focus from event-based evangelism to process-based evangelism. My own view is that we need to look at evangelism in this day and age more like a production line than a series of mega events. Because, you know, you have to whip the church up. You can only do it once a year. You have to whip them up into this frenzy of evangelism. They'll go and do something intensively for 3 weeks, and then they're so exhausted they can't do it again for another year. Evangelism should be something that we're doing all the time. It should be a constant process. Gets the members up and out if they've agreed to be your representative. It's a showcase for our doctrines. People can say, what do you Seventh-day Adventists believe? We say, well, you've just done it on the quiz. That's what we believe. It establishes us as a Bible-centered church. All of the answers to these quizzes are exclusively from the Bible. Each one is accompanied by a text. They can look up the text and find the answer. You know, it's a bit like answers to questions on doctrine, but a bit simpler. But I think that's important, that we are sola scriptura. Our answers always come from the Bible. And then there's this business about accountability where I started. We need to analyze everything that we're doing. And this provides a major database of information that we can trawl through. And just finally, some interesting things I found from the database. This is the most controversial one, and that is that some people respond more readily than others. You can't read those names. It's probably just as well. Well, I was just checking through it last night to think, is that really true, you know? You take the names from the people that have registered, and obviously some people are going to register under pseudonyms, and you get the crazy ones and that kind of thing. You look through the names, more than 50% of the names on any sample that you take anywhere through the database of the 12,500 people that have registered, more than 50% are not indigenous British. Okay? 20 years ago, I served on we had an Indigenous Evangelism Committee in the British Union. And some of I used to get furious on these committees. You know, some of my West Indian colleagues would say to me, the problem with you white people is, you know, you're just not spiritual enough. Sadly, I now have the data to prove that they were right. You know, whatever, sociology, explain it how you will, but more than half of the people that do our course, which is advertised to the general public, have names that are non-British names. It's just an interesting observation. And here's just a final one to finish on. Adventists and non-Adventists have a different take on what is important doctrinally. And can anyone guess what the least attractive doctrine that we have is to non-Seventh-day Adventists? Well, you've got to be careful here, haven't you? Because you're going to give yourselves away. You might be on telly. The answer is Christ's ministry in the heavenly sanctuary. And as you look through our doctrines, you find that some of the ones that are most precious to us as Seventh-day Adventists have the least interest to the general public. And that's, if you go on the Quiz 28 site, you can actually just check this out for yourself. You can see the list of doctrines that the respondents have actually gone through and the ones that they like in order of preference. Ignore the first 10 because most people just do 10 in the order that they come. But after that, it gets quite interesting. So there you have it. That is the Free Bible website. You can email me or talk to me afterwards, johnsurridge@freebible.org.uk or something like admin@freebible.org.uk. It'll all come to me, whatever. Thank you very much. Thank you.